Welcome to listening to Paint Dry with Mike and Dan, a podcast about the art and hobby of miniature painting. I'm Mike. Thank you so much for joining us on our continued quest to become better, braver, happier painters. So before we get into the fantastic interview we have today, a few quick announcements. The first is that Dan and I are super excited to announce that we will be helping host a class by Eric Swinson at Game Garrison October 16th and 17th, 2021. It'll be a two-day class that is going to be covering painting a figure Morlock from Chimera Models. It's a 75mm figure, so email us at listeningtopaintdry for more information, and that's listeningtopaintdry@gmail.com. There are still a few seats available, so if you hear this and want to take the class or in the area, please quickly email me so that way we can get you set up and get a seat. The second announcement is that, as you may have noticed, we have not put out content in a little bit, and the reason why is originally we were going to do a Journey to ReaperCon series, but some stuff has come up. Dan made a decision that he is not going to be able to attend, and that's all good. And so we decided that the episodes we had recorded for Journey to ReaperCon didn't make a lot of sense anymore. And so we kind of pulled the plug on that and decided to gear up for some other things that we are excited about coming down the road. The third announcement is that be ready for a flood of content coming through. Besides just today's interview with Chris Suhre, I have another interview that'll be coming out in a couple of days, and I'll tell you more on the other side of this interview. Also, that we'll be having interviews all during ReaperCon, etc. And my goal is to get something out every day I am there. So keep your eye out on our social medias at Listening to Paint Dry on Instagram and Facebook, as well as YouTube. Additionally, we have a Twitter account at Dry Listening. So yeah, keep your eyes out on those. And hopefully, if you're going to be at ReaperCon, let me know so we can meet up and I can actually meet one of our 6 listeners. So that'll be awesome. And our guest today is Chris Suhre. He is an absolutely fantastic artist that if you do not follow on Instagram or Facebook as of yet, you're going to want to do so after you hear the interview, and you will thank me later once you start browsing through his stuff. It is a rabbit hole of awesomeness, and we're really excited to have a fun conversation about painting, about the process, and hopefully Chris will make the decision to go ahead and go to ReaperCon too. So without further ado, Chris Suhre. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Michael. I appreciate it.
You know, it's really interesting. I've actually, a few years ago at the Nova Open, Eric Swinson, and I had a chance to talk to him and about some, we were talking about all different kinds of artists, and your name actually popped up. And then I got a chance to look at your work, and I've just been continually blown away. I really appreciate that you would take the time to be here with us.
Oh, I appreciate you having me on. I mean, I always enjoy talking about mini art. It's nice to hear that Eric was talking about me. He and I go back a ways. He's a really great guy.
Yeah, definitely. He was on a few weeks ago, and we're actually one of the announcements that'll play before here is we're coordinating a class for him in Fredericksburg in October. So we're pretty excited about that.
Oh, well, anyone that has a chance to go to that class absolutely should. I mean, I can't imagine. I mean, it's going to probably be fantastic. Actually, Eric is going to be coming to Warfare Weekend, which is in St. Louis, like at the beginning of November. So I signed up for all his classes. Nice.
Yeah, I actually was just managed to get into one of his classes at ReaperCon in a few weeks. So I'm pretty excited about that.
Yeah.
But anyways, we're here to talk about you, man.
Well, no, that's a good. I mean, I only talk about everyone in the art industry. They're all such a good group of people. I'm actually I'm debating ReaperCon. Like I got my ticket and I got my hotel room, but it's a long drive and I haven't decided yet.
Yeah, it's a tough call. My co-host just dropped out a couple days ago. He's like, yeah, I'm not doing it. He was really kind of upset that all the classes sold out like within a blink of the eye. I don't even think they got to regular admission before, like they did the VIPs got 2 days ahead of time. And I don't think, I thought from what I've heard, over 90% of the classes were gone before they got to regular admissions anyways.
Oh, really? Holy cow. Well, I mean, that's good for them and good for attendance. And
Yeah.
and all that. Yeah, I mean, like I already got signed up for all of Eric's classes at Warfare, and I mean, I think he's doing something very similar between the two events.
Yeah.
So I'm feeling pretty good.
No, absolutely. Yeah. It's good to, and I'm looking forward to hanging out. I figured I'll wind up doing a lot of podcast work, see how many people I can grab interviews from while I'm there and stuff. Um,
Sounds good.
so I hopefully, if you do decide to go, yeah, definitely let me know so we can meet face to face. That would be awesome.
Yeah. No, if I make it down there, I will come look you up.
All right, awesome. Yeah, I'll be the guy wandering around with a microphone. What's that guy doing? But all right, so let's go all the way back to the beginning. Can you tell us how you got started in the hobby?
Yeah, so actually I got started in the hobby mainly because so like back in the day, I was into playing like War Machine. Like when it first came out, I was real interested in the game. I enjoyed it quite a bit, tried to play competitively to some extent for a while. But after I got done with residency and got into practice, like that time to go hang out with the guys and play games and stuff like that really started to kind of dwindle and dry up. But I still wanted to be involved. And so I started spending more and more time like just painting my army and painting up the figures. And then I started getting a little bit better at it. And then I was like, well, I mean, maybe I can't play competitively, but I could start entering like the painting competitions and stuff like that. And that's right around the time that Privateer Press started doing their coin system. So like every year you had a chance to kind of like, so like doing the open system. So like, if you were like a bronze level painter, you got a bronze no matter how many people entered and stuff like that. So like the first year or second year that they did it, I took some figures and I got a bronze, and that kind of like started me thinking, hey, maybe I can do some more of this.
Well, that's awesome, man. It's always interesting to me that I haven't met anybody yet who started just as a painter, like, and then got into the games. It's always been get into the games and then paint.
Yeah, I think that's probably the entry drug for most of us.
Right, exactly. Now, were there any specific kind of techniques or challenges that you faced when you first decided that, hey, I'm going to up my game? Like what kind of were you looking at?
Um, I guess when I first started thinking, okay, I wanted to up my game was mainly with like the Privateer Press models. Like I said, you could like the first time I went, I got a bronze, and so I was like, okay, I want to work really really hard here and try to figure this stuff out, and maybe get a silver next year or something like that, and then keep working my way up. And a lot of it was trial and error at first. It was a lot, just a lot of like trying to figure out different combinations and things that look good together. Started kind of reading a little bit about art because mind you, my background is science, so I had very little art exposure. Um, kind of getting the basics of color theory and stuff like that. And I want to say within a couple of years of that, a buddy that was doing some painting had taken a class with Alfonso
Mhm.
and had come back with the idea of being fearless and just being bold and going for it. And so I started kind of taking that to heart. And so I just started trying to do things a little bit differently or a little bit more wild and not worrying about the results. And by having all those early mistakes, I started learning.
Nice. That's excellent. Yeah, it seems that you learn 10 times more from a mistake than a success.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, obviously we love the successes, right? Because we're like,
Right.
okay, I accomplished something. But I mean, chances are, if you did it all right, then you didn't necessarily learn anything new.
Right. Yeah, didn't learn anything new. And yeah, I don't know. It's not a challenge, right? That's
Right.
part of the motivation, right?
Yep. Yeah. No, I think yeah, I think there's like certain types of personalities, and I think the more successful painters in that are usually the ones who just it's not that they don't fail, they fail all the time, but they are just determined to not let that beat them, and so they try again.
What is kind of your favorite part of the artistic side of miniature painting?
Favorite part of the artistic side for me, the favorite part would be be one of two things. It'd either be the concept and like that mental exercise at brainstorming, or the actual like building and composition of the piece. I would say so. There are a lot of absolutely fantastic painters out there. What I almost enjoy more is building the entire scene and painting it. Like, it's not that the paint is like secondary, but it to me, it's not necessarily, it's one of the most important parts, but to me, it's like one of the ingredients. Like you won't really necessarily see me paint like a ton of bust. And it's because to me, like I just paint the bust and then I'm like, okay, well, that was it. But I enjoy more combining the elements, building the scene, showing what maybe something can be, something like that.
Nice. And that actually, that's a good kind of segue into this next question. Because I want to talk a little bit about your process because, there's always artists out there that people remind you of. And like, I feel like when I was describing your work to Dan a few weeks ago before we reached out, I kind of said to me, your artistic to him that your artistic style is kind of like if Roman LaPlante and Oliver Spaeth Honor Guard had a baby. And so you have that narrative side and the composition side of it. That's just amazing. I would love to like kind of pick your brain as to how you kind of put a piece together.
Well, first, I mean, pardon my language, but holy shit, that's a huge compliment. I mean, those are two of my probably top favorite artists. And I mean, for lack of a better way, from a hobby career, I guess, I grew up like looking at what they did.
Mm-hmm.
I just absolutely adore Roman's approach and Oliver's approach. I mean, actually, yeah, it's kind of going back to one those earlier questions, like you were saying, how did you kind of like progress and everything? Like as I was trying to get better and better at painting pieces for privateer press competitions and stuff like that, I started like going through Massive Voodoo like daily and trying to absorb everything I could that Roman put out there. I mean, and that was right around the time I think he did the Year of the Painter. And so like they were, him and Raph were putting out like articles like weekly or maybe even multiple times a week or something like that.
Right.
So I mean, anyway, that was a huge compliment. I'm sorry, what was that original question now again?
I just wanted to talk to you about kind of how you approach a piece. Like, I've noticed a few things in your work. Maybe this will help kind of clarify the direction. So the piece you did for the brush beast with the woman in the stew, kind of a narrative story in that build, and then not long after that, I believe it was a kind of a rabbit figure that you posted that you were working on the build for and trying to make decisions about. And so I guess what I'm trying to pick out is like, I guess maybe we'll start this way. What is a fuel for your projects? Like, what do you look like? What do you look for when you start a miniature? Like,
what do I look for when I start a miniature? So, I usually, it's a feeling or like an idea, trying to connect to something maybe from like my past or just this kind of idea. So like let's take Grandma for example. That's the picture, the piece with like the lady in the stew and stuff like that, which is something I more recently did under Alfonso's guiding hand, and it's actually one of the favorite things I've ever done. But the idea there was just to just wanted to try to recreate that sensation that I had, that protective, homey atmosphere that, typically grandmas and moms and stuff like that kind of give you. So always the first part of a project for me is like the brainstorming. That's, like just going out there, not only looking at like, say, the miniatures that are available on a community, but then also trying to pull things off of Pinterest and stuff like that kind of create this the idea, the setting that I want. along those lines, a buddy a long time ago, James Craig, had
Hmm.
um, given me told me this idea that he does in his art class about like an inspiration bank. And literally this is basically this mental concept of like just watching a movie or reading a book or seeing a picture and being like, hey, that's a really cool image or a really cool thought. I'm just going to kind of put that back in the back of my head and just let it sit there and simmer. And you may never use it, or maybe you'll use it like 5 years later, but you kind of pull from that to get your project started later. And so, the inspiration can really kind of come from anywhere. But like I said, with grandma, it kind of came from just wanting to recreate this kind of like home feeling atmosphere. Um,
Now,
and
did
so,
you have the miniature before that, or was it something that you
no,
saw and you're like, okay, I got to get that?
no. I mean, I think really if I remember, I actually got my sketchbook here with me. I think the real first idea was just wanting to create the kitchen, yeah, like a kitchen type atmosphere with like a little fire in it, trying to create that kind, almost like a hobbit hole or something like that, like a hobbit kitchen or something. And then I went searching through minis, and I definitely have a thing for like big child creatives
Hmm.
style.
Yeah.
So I'm going through there. I'm like, oh hey, look, the like dwarf here that's cooking and everything. Like she actually just fits perfectly the way she is. I mentioned that to my wife, and she got it for me for Christmas. And soon after that, I started building the project. And when you build a piece like that, you have like kind of a basic idea of the main things you want to have in it. So like for her, it was like, okay, I definitely want to create like a kitchen atmosphere. It's going to need to have a fireplace. It's going to need to have like a table with the soup on it and have her. But those were like the key elements that only had to be present. Everything else kind of just started getting built and tweaked and built and tweaked as I needed.
Right. You needed bread. There's no, you got to have Mama's Kitchen with
Oh
bread, right?
yeah, 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 yeah. No, yeah, no, you're absolutely right. That was actually, part of it as I'm building it. I'm like, what are those smells you associate with like, the warm kind of homey kitchen? And it's like bread and pie,
Right.
So
Exactly. Now, did you sculpt those yourself or?
no, I stole I totally swiped them from my daughter's dollhouse set.
Okay, I can't lie. I've done it too. I've been clean. My kids are older now. They're at 12 through 17. And so cleaning up, I found all these like Polly Pocket pieces, and a couple
Yeah,
times Lego has had some stuff that I'm like, okay, I'll take that too. And so
yeah,
I
yeah,
just throw
nothing.
them into a bin.
Right, yeah, nothing wrong with them. I mean, you can literally pretty much paint anything, right? You give it a base coat of spray paint and put some paint on it. I mean, if it's going to be like a key figure that people are really going to go examine and look at it, then maybe it won't be good enough quality. But for something that's kind of just in the background or something like that, you can put some paint on it and you make them believe it.
Right. Absolutely. I think I'm debating about bringing a piece I did to ReaperCon, which is I found a Jack in the dollar store.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, this paint job is so bad. And my 12-year-old well, repaint it. And I went, well, I could, and so I bought it and I repainted it. So
Well,
yeah, I was like, should
is
I
it
bring
oh, who did it recently? Was it Patricia? Like Patricia Sancho or Sanchez. I forgot her last name. Or is it Natalia? I think one of the two of them took one of those. What is that female magician that was kind of associated with Batman, the Zendaya or something like that. But they
right.
like literally took one of those statues
Mhm.
and repainted it, and it was phenomenal. Like, I
Oh, I'm gonna have
mean,
to look
it
that up.
totally elevated it. I mean, there's nothing wrong with painting. I mean, we're pretty much painting toys anyway, right? I mean,
Right.
so yeah, there's nothing wrong with that.
Absolutely.
I mean,
Absolutely.
heck, I mean, since you guys had interviewed Alfonso one time, I don't know if he mentioned it, but like one of the exercises he has on his website, one of the videos you can see is just basically repainting Disney Infinity figures from that old video game. And
Right.
it's like a fantastic exercise because it just teaches you the basics of volumes.
Right.
Um,
And I think didn't Massive Voodoo, didn't they Roman run
yeah,
a contest for that too?
they did. I actually won that contest.
Nice. What piece
Yeah.
was it that won?
I took what's her name? Merida. And I kind of tore her up and painted her and gave her a story because I thought maybe Roman would appreciate that. And the story is not all what was not all endings are happy. And
Mm,
so instead of her saving her mom and her dad and stuff like that, the demon bear actually consumes them. And so she ends up becoming like a barbaric bear killing machine. And so it's like her, but war paint on, switched out her bow. Those like little will-o-wisps that go with her, they burn red instead of blue because of her anger.
right.
And so yeah, like yeah, and it actually won first place. So I was pretty proud. That was one of my first big accomplishments, I think.
That's awesome. That's a belated congratulations. That was a few years ago. That was
Thanks.
right when I was getting back into the hobby. And so I kind of missed a bunch of stuff. Like I feel like that so I've been back in the hobby about 5 years now, I guess.
Uh-huh.
So there was like a chunk of stuff that I keep hearing about that was kind of right around that time before I figured out that there was kind of a world of painting. And I kind of, when I got back into it, I took a single, the Games Workshop guys convinced me to go try taking a class at the Nova Open.
Uh-huh.
And so when I saw the display case there, I was like, holy crap, what's going
Oh, I
on? And
know.
then they had a display of all the Roman stuff. And I'm like, wow,
Right. You start seeing what it can actually be. Like, I mean,
yeah.
there's like, there's painted figures and they're all different levels of art, but then you see some of the things like, like Ben or Roman or like Alfonso, Mark, I mean, any number of guys accomplish, and you're like, this is like legit art. It's like really impressive.
Right. And then, and that's why I always, when usually the first person I show though, when people like kind of like, oh yeah, art, I kind of I go to Kirill's
Oh yeah,
Instagram page and I'm like, yeah, it's art.
it's
Yeah.
art. Yeah, yeah.
And now I've been showing people Eric stuff more and more too, because
Oh yeah.
his stuff is just getting insane.
Oh, it is.
Um,
Yeah. I mean, he's just on this like what like meteoric rise upward. He's doing, I mean, it just gets better and better and better. And I'm privileged enough to be a friend of his, and we chat and stuff like that. We bounce ideas off each other. And so I've seen some of the stuff he's got like brewing and everything, and it's just, I mean, it's impressive.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, but let's talk, let's again go back to you, because
Sure.
one of the things I love about your bases is your color choices.
Uh-huh.
And in, like, let's say the Mama's Kitchen one, and what we'll do when we post, with your permission, when we announce the episode, we'll use like some of your pictures, if that's okay, to announce the
Sure.
episode.
Yeah, that's
um
fine.
and I've learned how to tag things in watermark now, so they'll definitely let know that they're your work, so they won't be confused. But I noticed that in that one, because you're looking for that homey feel, there were a lot of warm colors. It's kind of more like there's a warm feeling to it.
Yep.
Can you talk kind of a little bit about how you work with colors or make color decisions?
Sure. Um, I would say usually the first thing I kind of do is, so I would say I think I'm a lot more of like a diorama painter, an atmospheric type painter, stuff like that. Like I'm trying to generate a feeling. I'm not like a great technical painter. Like, I mean, you can look at stuff like Eric does, and it's incredibly well blended, beautiful non-metal metallic. And I'm more interested in that kind of raw feeling, generating that.
Mhm.
So the first one is really just like, what is that main feeling that you want? So like like you were saying in Grandma's Kitchen, I want it to be homey. I want it to feel warm, inviting. So painting it in a cold palette would kind of be counterproductive to that. So it's like, okay, well, I want to paint in warm colors. What type of colors is that going to be? It's going to be like, oranges, yellow, reds, some purples, stuff like that. Um, So then it became, okay, well, what colors would you associate it with, kind of being an indoor kitchen? And then it started becoming a lot more like, well, it's going to be fall or Christmas colors, but I didn't really want to do the Christmas thing. So we kind of steered a little bit more away from the red and green and just went with like, fall colors, like oranges and yellows and things like that. And then once that's picked, once you kind of get that main core of color, then you start picking like complements, and setting up your color scheme for like the rest of what's going to be kind of going on. Like for instance, like one of my older pieces, probably one that I first kind of put me on the radar type thing, was a piece called How to Train Your Dragon. And in that one, there's this big dragon from Carol Rudick, and then there's like this kind of mage-like female with it, and the dragon was going to be associated with the water, so I went with like a blue on it. But then to contrast directly with that, to make it pop, I put like orange with it, and that's mainly what the woman is painted in. So you got this kind of contrast between the two of them, and then it also kind of plays out nice because cold colors tend to be kind of appear or feel lighter, and warm colors tend to have more of like a presence. So even though she's a smaller figure, the fact that she's mainly in oranges makes her feel kind of bigger, when related with the dragon and stuff like that. So I guess kind of go back to your question. Really, the first part is just trying to get that overall feeling and what color would be associated with that type of feeling. So like, like with, Grandma's Kitchen, it's with that warmth, that's orange. Let's say I wanted to do something that was more maybe eerie or mystical, then it'd probably be more like a turquoise or something like that, because that's kind of associated with like magic and stuff like that. If you want to go with something that's maybe a little bit more sickly or disgusting, then you're probably looking at like some type of green. And then, from there I would pick colors that complement those to set the rest of the environment.
Okay, so it is. I guess that's what always intrigues me, because you say you have more of a science background and so not an art background. Do you find that these things that you're learning in the world of art are now becoming more second nature, or do you feel like you still are kind of purposely or methodically making these kind of decisions, or is it just kind of like, does like the color wheel just kind of come to you and you go?
The color wheel kind of comes to me anymore, but it's definitely still this conscious decision. And there's definitely times too where I'll be painting something and I'll be like, this totally isn't working. Why is this not working? And then go back into like the thought process and be like, well, maybe this purple that I'm using is more red than it is blue. And I really need, like the blue, the contrast with the orange. So maybe instead of using this red purple, I need to go with more of a blue purple, and it kind of plays off that. So there is, that's kind of thing, like, to people who are not in art, there seems to be this almost mystical, magical sense of like, how did they create this? Why does this thing make me feel that way? But there's a real science to it too. Like certain colors we associate with certain things, and then certain colors are paired with other colors. Like, if something's got blue, then usually there's an orange somewhere. If you have green, there's usually a red hidden somewhere. And so you can make these scientific choices to kind of help you. Along those lines too, something else that that I really kind of enjoy in building dioramas or something like that is this idea of composition. So composition is this idea that our brain looks for patterns in a picture, and by placing miniatures in certain ways or in certain positions, in certain spots of a diorama, you're more likely to focus on them, and they're more likely to feel like they have more of a presence. And this is something you actually see done in movies all the time, like, especially like good quality movies. Like literally last night, my wife and I are watching Jaws. And there's that scene where Jaws is basically making the second attack on the beach where he gets the little kid. And then they zoom in on Brody, and his wife is behind him. And the horizon is directly like even with his like shoulders. And it's the idea of creating this cross like figure on the screen, because it makes you focus even that much more on Brody's face to see that shock. But yeah, doing those type of things, like when you build a diorama, is something else that's very scientific, but that I feel like kind of helps me out when I do my pieces.
how often do you have to kind of scrap a build, or have you had to scrap a build recently?
I get let me ask you to clarify real quick. What do you mean by scrap a build? Do you mean like I totally set the project aside and never come back to it, or I have to rebuild it?
Well, let's start with the first one that
Okay.
you're like, okay, this one, yeah, this isn't coming to life.
So totally scrapping a project probably happens about every third project to almost maybe every other project. It's a it's been a lot,
Mhm.
especially not really the last year, but the year before that or so. There was quite a bit of it. Like there was a period of time after like the last Crystal Brush, and then and up until now that I felt like I kind of lost my way of what I really wanted to be doing.
Mhm.
And so there was a lot of projects that would get started, and I'd be like, I freaking hate this, and I just stop. And I think part of one of the lessons I've learned over the last couple of years is you just got to paint what you like. Like you just have to work with the subjects, and you have to paint the things you like. Just because maybe something else is a competition you can enter or do something like that. If you're not enjoying it, then there's really no point in doing it because you're probably not going to produce anything that's really amazing.
Mhm.
Um, Now going to the second part, how many times have I started a project and then had to like rip it apart or rebuild it or something like that? Pretty much every damn project. I mean, like to give you some examples, I can give you like two good examples, I think. So one project, going back to that one project that I talked about, the how to train your dragon,
Mhm.
that thing I ripped apart and rebuilt. I don't know how many times. I had to literally cut that dragon up, and it's mind you, I mean, not to sound I don't know pompous or something like that, but this was a dragon I bought from Carol, and it was like over $200. I mean, it's an
Right.
expensive dragon and everything, and I literally butchered the thing. I mean, I just cut it into tons of pieces and stuff like that, and I would have to like I build it, I would start painting it, then I'd realize a part didn't work, like it didn't look correct or something like that. Have to break it off, re-sculpt something, reattach something, paint it again, stuff like that. Um, one of the one of the best lessons that piece taught me was to just to be bold and to keep moving forward because it has a like resin water effect with it.
Mhm.
And I poured that resin. And I mean, mind you, I had done numerous trials to make sure I was going to get this right. And I poured that resin. I remember it was near Christmas. Pour the resin. I let it set for 2 days because it's a fair amount of resin. And I tried to take the border off from around it, and it would not come off. I literally
Oh,
had to get a scalpel and slice it off over several hours and then sand it down and everything.
oof.
Um, yeah, and so
Yeah.
so we all have those setbacks. I mean, everyone does. I mean, um,
Yeah, I did a resin pour one time and I let it sit for 2 days and I came back and it looked like it had a sinkhole in the middle of it. And I'm
yeah,
like, how is
yeah.
that even possible?
I don't
Like,
know. I'm literally getting ready to do a resin pour on a new piece for another artist, and I'm terrified to do it because I don't want to fuck up everything I've already done.
yeah, my one of the I'm doing 3 pieces for ReaperCon, and I really for me I've basically like thrown caution to the wind in everything that I've done because I've never really done non-metallic metals, and one piece is almost entirely non-metallic metals, and including copper, which is like, hey Mike, why don't you start with the most difficult one of them? And then another one I'm doing is of a Reaper female pirate in a champagne glass that I bought from the dollar store. And so I kind of built up a beach and put palm trees in it. And I broke one side of it off to have. So my goal is to kind of have water like cascading over the edge.
Uh-huh.
And I have literally sat in front of it for like hours with the UV resin ready to go. And I'm like, I can't do it. I
Yeah,
can't do it yet. I'm not ready.
yeah, I hear you. I mean,
So,
give another example of like having to tear down and redo a project. So I have a piece that I think I can now say it's done. I just recently finished it. And it's a piece that has taken over a year to do.
mhm.
And it's a piece I started and I was building it. And then I started doing coaching with Alfonso. And basically the first time I showed it to Alfonso, he was basically like, this is not good. He's
Oh,
like, it is just not good. And so he kind of presented me with, he's like, you can keep going forward, but it's not going to be good, or you can take the time to redo it and make it into something better. And so I like literally destroyed the entire base, rebuilt everything, redid all this type of stuff, and I'm incredibly happy I did, because I think it might be my favorite thing I've done at this point. Like Grandma was my favorite up until now, and now there's definitely a competition between her and this.
oh, nice. Very cool.
So
I think if Alfonso told me that I needed to stand on my head and paint, I would stand on my head and paint.
yeah, yeah. I mean, like I've been doing coaching with him for just under a year at this point,
Mhm.
and it's been amazing. Like it's um, I mean, I get the impression that sometimes people go to him for coaching and maybe they don't follow what he's telling them. And I went
Mhm.
in with the attitude is like, whatever he tells me to do, I'm going to do. If he tells me to dunk the thing in like, black ink, I'll do it. I want to learn what he does and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it really, I was saying like earlier how I felt kind of like lost. It really has put me back on track.
Mhm.
And I mean, honestly, I feel like starting from October, I've produced maybe not more things, but everything I'm turning out at the moment, I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty happy with this.
That's awesome. That's huge. Yeah, and that's I guess we had James Craig a few episodes ago on the show, and
Uh-huh.
he one of the things he said that the number of people that won categories or awards in the Brush Beast that are actually Banshee's private coaching students, he's like, it's mind boggling.
Oh, it is. It's no, it's mind boggling.
Yeah.
Like, I mean,
Let's talk about
yes,
somebody at the top of their game, you know.
yeah, no, he's you know, I think I told him one time, or and maybe mentioned it to some other folks in that there are definitely a lot of really, really good painters out there,
Mhm.
um, but there's not necessarily a lot of good painters out there that are also good teachers, and he's
Correct.
good at both.
Yeah,
So
yeah, and that's where you find like too, like a Roman LaPlata is
yeah,
and probably like, when I saw him dump wash directly on a base, I'm like, I'm sold, I'm in, and he's sitting there moving it around with his hands and fingers and not even using a brush, and I'm like, I'm in.
yeah,
This is what I want to do.
yeah. Like Roman one time did that monkey bust all in, or maybe it's actually technically an ape, but like an ape bust all by finger paint. I was like, this is fantastic.
Yeah.
I mean, that is one painter that I have never met that I just dream of meeting someday.
Yeah, hopefully, we can get you over to the NOPA Open
Yeah, yeah, no,
next
that's
year.
that's my goal for next year. I was really wanting to go. Actually, the piece I just finished, I
Mhm.
had originally painted with the idea that I'd be taking it to Nova this year.
Right to the Capitol Palette. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great painting competition for sure. There's so many good pieces. My co-host actually, um, I don't know, given the nature of what's going on with that, I don't know. But in the past couple of years, he's actually run the Capitol Palette.
Uh-huh.
And so yeah, I got a lot of insight into how they, like all that, where they place things, et cetera, things like that, and how that whole process works. And it's interesting. But
Yeah,
it's definitely a great show.
it
Um,
is. Yeah.
so it's funny. What you were talking about tearing down a building. I'm looking over on you can't I can't show it. But on my case, one of my cases, I have all of my rebuilds and stuff. So I did a piece for Capital Palette a few years ago that I had two little girls looking at each other. It was the Marie LaFleur figure from
Okay.
Mr. Lee, and it was
Yeah.
kind of like happy. It was called The Thing She Sees. One side is happy, one side is sad. I built that base for it. I have 13 of them until I got to the final one that was like, okay, I have to be done. Or
Yeah.
paint will never be on this.
Yeah. I'm like literally my cases are in my studio here with me
Mhm.
where I'm doing this. And I'm like literally looking at the bottom right now, and I was like, yeah, I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It looks like 7 unfinished projects.
Mhm. Nice. Nice, very nice. That's good. I'm glad others are out there that are struggling are like,
Oh yeah,
I
yeah.
got all this stuff to do. Um, so a little bit about paint choices. if you don't mind. You know, kind of a little bit of a switching gears there, but I'm curious. One of the big things in the hobby world right now, you see like tons of YouTube videos about universal shadow and highlight colors. Are there colors that kind of make their way on your palette often, or are you more of like the heavy body acrylic type artist?
You mean like particular brands or particular like hues?
It could be either, you know,
Okay.
whatever works for you.
So, um, blue, as far as hues go, blue and turquoise always seem to make it into all my pieces. Like my wife will literally all the time, she'll like, oh, I see it's the same color. Stuff like that. So I mean, in other, friends have mentioned that and that too. I think I'm kind of getting a little bit more away from that with Alfonso,
Mhm.
because I'm just getting more comfortable. When it comes to like brands, I mean, if you'd asked me this question like a year or two ago, I probably would be like, oh no, I just use like Khmer and Scale 75. But I mean, Alfonso's really kind of got me like pulling paints from everywhere for different effects. I'm like, I'm starting to feel a lot more comfortable seeing not only what the color is, but the texture of that paint is, the
Mhm.
how glossy or how flat it is. I'm starting to get more used to those ideas. So I find myself now just constantly reaching for all different types.
Yes, do you I know one of the things I remember from Alfonso's class was he was talking about, because I did a bus painting class with him.
Uh-huh.
He talked about like, you know, learning your paints. Do you rub the paints in your fingers too? Like
Oh,
I always like rub the
yeah.
paint in my finger to see what the texture is like.
Usually after a paint section or a paint session,
Mhm.
my left forefinger and thumb are all different colors.
Nice.
I'll brush them on there. I'll brush them on paper to kind of see how they're gonna react on that. Um, I mean, and there are, I mean, like kind of going back to what Rowan was doing with figure painting. I mean, there's literally pieces. I mean, that I have like I painted with my fingers on them. Like this most recent one that I've been working on, there's definitely parts of the background where I just basically slap some paint on and then took my fingers and used it to smear it and do stuff like that. On grandma's, I guarantee some of those rocks probably have like places where I put paint and then I smeared it around with like my thumb or something.
Nice. Nice. I love it. I love that, using everything that's out there for you, you know,
Yeah.
including your fingers for sure. Now, one of the things I'd like to do with our guests, this is a relatively new segment, but the goal is to kind of be fun.
Uh-huh.
We call it the lightning round. And
Okay.
so the purpose of it is I'll ask a question, and you just give me the first thought that's off the top of your head, and we'll keep moving from there. I'm not strict on time or anything along those lines, but it's just kind of see a gut reaction. Okay.
Sure.
All right. So we'll start with an easy one that I already gave you. When was the last time you drank your paint water?
Uh, I mean, if we're talking from the brush, then probably like about 2 hours ago.
No, I mean the accident. Like, oops, crap! I
Oh,
just drank from my paint cup.
actually, I probably haven't done that in several months because I
All right.
usually I tend to drink Gatorade when I'm painting, and that's in a bottle. So
Nice. So you take precautions, is what you
yeah, yeah,
say.
yeah.
So the gods of the brush have now descended upon you and said you can only paint with one paintbrush for the rest of your life. What paintbrush is it, and what size?
Winsor Newton, Series 7, Kolinsky Sable, size 1.
Size one?
Yeah.
Okay. Ooh, excellent, excellent. So then we'll ask this question. Um, Inks, heavy body acrylics, or model paints? You only get to choose one. Where are you going?
Um, Probably the heavy body acrylics then.
Nice, nice. I'm starting. I've been using those a lot more myself as well. All
Yeah.
right, now here's the tough one: non-metallic metal or true metallic metal, and why?
Oh boy, that really depends on the circumstance, but I think in general I tend to do non-metallic metals anymore. Because I like the I mean, I'm definitely a bit of a control freak, and so I like being able to dictate that shine. Um, but I'm becoming a lot more comfortable with non-metal metallics, and so I'm doing them a lot more and more.
Nice, nice. All right, see, easy. The lightning round is always pretty easy. So, is there anything out there? Like, is there a miniature out there that you haven't, that you would like to get, that you want to paint, or is there something from genre or lore that you would like to see be made that hasn't been made yet. And I always give the example of Stephen King's Dark Tower series. I would love to see the miniatures for his characters, especially based on the Jay Lee graphic novel.
Oh, okay. So yeah, if I can do that, you know what? Then I want to see Critical Role brought to life. Are you familiar with that?
I am not actually. I'm gonna have to look
So
that up.
yeah, I will give a quick I shouldn't say plug. They don't need a plug from me or anything like that. Critical Role is a podcast where, as they would put it, a group of nerdy ass voice actors play D&D, and it's a group of 6 of them or so, and they
Nice.
play D&D with their voice actor, using that to make their characters and everything, and it's just it takes me back to those days where I used to play D&D with my friends in high school, because it's that wonderful combination of trying to actually do something and play this game, and then absolutely doing the absolute most absurd, stupid shit as your character.
Nice.
And so like they've got a character, like one of them from their most recent campaign that they finished, there was like a human wizard that was a guy, but he had like books strapped to his side, kind of like almost like guns, his magic books. There was like a tiefling, one of them that was kind of like the court gesture type and wear all these wild clothes. There was actually a thief that was actually a goblin. Just very unique character generation. And
Nice.
I would like to see that brought to life. I think that'd be really cool.
It's fun. It actually, have you ever heard of Hello from the Magic Tavern?
No, I haven't.
Okay, yeah. So basically, it's a guy gets lost, accidentally falls through a portal behind a Burger King drive-through, and he goes basically into a fantasy world where it's a lot of the same type of character. It's not, they don't play Dungeons and Dragons, but you can tell that the guys who wrote this play Dungeons and
A little
Dragons.
bit. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, and I struggle, like, because I had to, somebody told me, oh yeah, it's a tiefling. I'm like, I have no idea what that is, so I had to look up what a tiefling was.
Yeah, yeah. Basically, it's a cross between a human, and if they, had a relationship with like a demon, and they gave birth, it's like a basically demon human hybrid.
Right. Oh yeah. Excellent. Yeah, and that's yeah, I don't, yeah, I was never allowed to play Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah, like
my mom thought go ahead. I'm
they
sorry.
thought they thought it was like the pact with the devil or whatever.
Well, yeah, it was because it was, when I was around that age, it was satanic panic time. And
Yeah.
so,
Yep.
you know,
No, I'm suspecting I'm a little bit younger than you, but
mhm,
that was still kind of floating around. Like my parents were not pleased. Like
right.
they're like, I guess, I mean, at least you're being social. So, but I mean, yeah, they definitely don't like it. So,
Right. And my parents let my older brother do it, but they didn't think I had the mental capacity to withstand. They thought I'd be sacrificing. And so when they went to a game store in the mall by where I lived, the guy asked me why I wasn't over at the Dungeons and Dragons stuff, and I was like, "Yeah, I don't really play it." And he's like, "Well, what about this?" And that's when the first time somebody handed me a box of Rogue Trader 1 Space Marines, and so I was like, there's my origin story right there. I bought a box of 30 Space Marines for $15. I mean, God, what those were the days.
yeah, yeah,
Now you can get one for 35,
exactly.
It's so much has changed for sure. So I don't want to keep you too much longer. But one of the things that I always like to ask, our motto is better, braver, and happier. And so I was hoping that you could lay some advice down on our listeners as they continue their journeys to become better, braver, happier painters.
Um, Actually, that's pretty much perfect right there, right? I mean, if you want to be a better painter, all you really have to do is, pick things that you're happy with, because you'll probably keep working on them. And I definitely, believe in being brave and bold in what you're painting. Like try new things. If it doesn't work out, who cares? It's a little plastic toy, you know. Even when you kind of get further along and you're like doing competitions and that, okay, so you paint something and take it to a competition. Maybe it doesn't work out. Does it really matter? No, because there's going to be another competition. I mean, like for me, like when there was still Crystal Brush around and all that type of stuff, it was never really about going there and being like, oh, I'm gonna try to like win this because I mean, you're taking on Europeans that are, have 1,000 times my experience and stuff like that. That was never gonna happen. But it was being able to go there and be like, hey, look at this thing I did, and just having that ability to show and stuff like that. So I mean, I think you should always take the risk. Sometimes it'll fail, sometimes it'll work, but you'll learn something every time.
Nice. I appreciate it. Yeah. There's only rewards, right? There's really
Yeah.
no, because it's like you said, it's just a piece of plastic or a
It's
resin,
just, yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you do something and it doesn't work out, it doesn't fulfill the idea that you had, it doesn't mean it was a bad idea. Maybe just try doing it a different way.
Right. And I will say this too, that just kind of sub-referencing what you had said before about, you had that Carol Rudiak dragon that you chopped up. The number of conversations that I've had with people, they're like, oh yeah, I bought this like, $200 piece, and I was like taking a Dremel to it, and I'm like, my heart like stops, like, whew, and
No,
I'm
like literally when I did that, like, okay, so I remember that day like vividly. And I was doing a lot of conversations with like Kat Martin and
Mhm.
Seth Watkins at that point. And
Nice.
so, I was like, hey, do you think this is something? I like hold up this like, the little like mage girl next to the dragon. Do you think this could be something? Like, they're like, yeah, I think that could be something that might actually work. And then I cut the dragon up and like I lay it out on the table in like, 8, 10, 15 different pieces or something like that. Take a picture and I literally send the picture to them. I'm like, what the hell did I just do?
Nice. Yeah, I could see that. Yeah. That would be me right there. I don't know if the drove if it would actually the cutting would ever happen,
Yeah.
When I get back from ReaperCon, I have a commission for a friend to do his resin Forge World smog,
Uh-huh.
which is like 17 pounds of resin. And in all of the joints where everything goes, there's like built up resin. And I
Uh-huh.
know I'm going to have to take a Dremel to it. And like every time I think about it, I have to grab a paper bag. I start hyperventilating. I'm like, that's a $500 model.
Yeah. I have to admit, like I have looked at that model a couple of times and I'm like, oh yeah, that'd be kind of cool to paint. And then I see the price tag, it's like it's not that cool.
No, yeah, I would have never bought it, but yeah, no, he wants it for a piece. He runs a game store, so he wants it as like kind of a centerpiece.
Sure.
Um, and I'm like, all right, but it's not getting painted until after September, so for sure. Well, Chris, where can our listeners find your work?
You can I mean, I'm on Facebook. You can find me on Putty and Paint. If you want to see some of like my pieces, yeah, you can look under d.vader there. But actually probably the best place to go is just Instagram. And on there, it's just Chris_Suhre. That's SUHRE_miniature_art.
Perfect. That's awesome. Yeah, we'll definitely put links in the show notes and when we announce the episode. So, but yeah, thank you again so much. It was such an honor to have you on the show with us.
Oh no, the honor and fun was mine. Thank you.
Dan and I would like to thank Chris Suhre for joining us today. Really appreciate him taking the time out of his busy schedule to share his painting journey with us. He's a fantastic artist and, of course, was an awesome guest. You can follow him on Instagram at Chris_Suhre_miniature_art. We'll put a link to the show in the show notes. And also, just so you know, his last name is spelled Suhre. Again, thank you so much, Chris. It was wonderful having you. Hopefully, we'll be able to meet you at ReaperCon. You can follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Listening to Paint Dry. And you can also follow us on Twitter at Dry Listening. If you don't have a podcast player and still want to follow along with the show, you could follow us also on YouTube, where it's Listening to Paint Dry with Mike and Dan, where all of our shows are up there. It is an audio format, so it is great for you to listen and paint along. You can also drop us a line at listeningtopaintdry@gmail.com. Remember, if you're interested in taking the class taught by Eric Swinson, Robinson at Game Garrison in Fredericksburg, Virginia, October 16th through 17th, 2021. Please email us. Again, that's listeningtopaintdry@gmail.com for more information and to register. But hurry up, seats are filling up pretty fast, so it's going to be a great class and a lot of fun. We'll be back in a couple of days, actually, with another interview with the fantastic Lila Mev, Mini Witch. She spent some time with us the other day, and we're really excited to bring that interview out. Plus, there will also be a ton of ReaperCon episodes coming out, as well as some awesome interviews that I've already pre-scheduled. So hopefully those will take place, and we'll get those pumped out very quickly. So again, thank you so much for joining us today. And remember, every painting journey starts with the first brushstroke. You could become a better, braver, happier painter. Thank you so much. Until next time. Listening to Paint Dry with Mike and Dan is a production of LTPTWMD. All rights reserved. No portion of this recording may be used without the express written consent of the host. The music is Death by a Thousand Questions by Springtide. Download from the Free Music Archive on a non-commercial attribution share-alike basis. All views and opinions expressed in the show are solely the views and opinions of the person who said them. All celebrity voices, if any, were impersonated and done so poorly.